you don't really know who you are or what you are until you put a really big challenge in front of you.
Fear is an asset and ally here to help you be magnificent.
This crazy, silly, stupid idea to run across the Sahara Desert.
You did make it this time, but you said if you didn't make it, you would try again and again.
Everybody's connected to nature, connected to music, to their families, and now we're going to build a world that doesn't have racism and war and starving kids.
I kept telling myself, run at me, and just keep smiling.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going really well. I was going to do a walking thing, but then I have to wear my mask because I'm in, Washington Square Park. And so I thought maybe it'd be better if I came up on my roof. So I'm up on my roof right now.
Oh, nice. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Where are you?
See that view?
Here. So yeah.
Oh, wow. Look at that view.
It's really awesome.
So I'm actually recording now. Usually I like to start the podcast by asking people to describe where it is that we're walking right now so that people can get a sense, if they're walking along with us, what it's like. So can you maybe describe that for the people who are walking along with us right now?
Yeah, of course. So I live in the heart of downtown New York City, Manhattan. I live in Greenwich Village. And so we overlook the NYU campus and Washington Square Park. And so I'm on the 35th floor of my building, which is, we have a little rooftop garden, and that's where I'm going to be doing my walk here so I can be socially distanced from other people.
Nice. Yeah, I'm in Stuyvesant Town right now. So I'm just walking through there's a basketball court around next to my apartment. So I usually just been walking around the basketball court and the playgrounds. There's not too many people out. I got my mask too, in case I need to pull it up. Somebody, if I'm near people.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful day in New York this morning.
It is.
Perfect temperature. It's starting to be summer.
I know. It's getting antsy I've been running. I ran yesterday for the first time outside, and I thought of you because I knew we were talking today. How are you doing with your running?
Doing good. I feel like, my body goes through different phases and I got to listen to it, but I was really training hard for a long time. And then over the quarantine, I felt like I needed to not train as hard. Mm-hmm. And so I'm starting to get back into training hard again, but I've been running through the whole thing. And, I live close to the East River, so it's really great to run on the East River. And there's actually been more people out now than ever before.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And
people have been cloistered for 7 weeks. They're home.
Yeah, well, even during the quarantine, actually, there was more people out running or walking on the East River than I would see it typically on a morning. I think it's just because they're being told that you have to be inside. People want to get out and enjoy the fresh air. And with charity miles, actually, we've seen a major increase in activity because that's the only thing people can do is go out for a walk or a run. Yeah. So, but now I'm starting to get back into the training. Where did you run this morning, or where were you going to run? Or yesterday, I guess you said you ran.
Yeah, I run down by Washington Square Park, and then I go out to the West Side Highway. Similar, it's pretty packed, so you have to go at early mornings or evenings. Nice.
So how are you?
I'm doing really well, actually, all things considered. I think the sentiment in New York is starting to lift. I mean, this is the most resilient city, I think, in the country. Yeah. We've gone through a lot, and I think people know how to band together when there are times of need. Mm-hmm. And so I'm lucky because my industry, is generally filled with optimists.
Yes.
Investing in founders and building alongside founders, you look for opportunity. And so I think that's saved me mentally, where we really are always thinking about how opportunity can arise from crisis.
Right. That's actually one of the main reasons I was hoping to catch up with you and do it on a podcast, because it'd be cool to share with everybody. But I wanted to catch up with you generally just to hear, what you're thinking about these days. Mostly for, I'm interested in it, but I bet the people out there in our community be interested in it too. Just to set it up, like I've been feeling like this is a great time for entrepreneurs. Like, because entrepreneurs, for me, it's like you see a problem and you try to fix it, and there's a heck of a lot of problems right now to be fixed or addressed. So thinking about actually, before we get into that, can you just like give everybody an introduction about who you are and what you do and why you have that kind of
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a lot to say that I have that kind of knowledge, but we're learning alongside everyone here. It's definitely there's no precedent for this. But so my name's Heather Hartnett, and I run a venture fund called Human Ventures, and we're based in New York, and we have a little bit different of a model because we found a strong need for a platform to help builders build. So we have what's called a startup studio alongside our fund, and we'll bring in founders early, even sometimes pre-concept, to build in a category and have operational, people on staff to be able to help get that founder off the ground. And a lot of times we work with multiple time founders. They're just looking to build in a new category. And it's called Human Ventures for a couple different reasons. One, we really believe in investing in the founder first. So, we identify people who have different types of attributes than might be traditionally invested in. We look for what we think are next generation founders. And then we also have our category focus is called the human needs economy. And well, maybe I'll stop there because I think that's what we're going to go into as well. But it's our specific areas of focus.
So just to maybe break that down a little bit for other people out there who might not know what a venture fund is, what is a venture fund?
So venture fund is it's really you're investing in founders at the earliest stages of innovation. And
okay, so you start up founders and you make like the seed or Series A investment, like first money in.
Yep. Yeah. Now there's even what's called pre-seed, which is when you have a founder and you want to get to the point. It's just much more granular. You need to know where there are some signs that your company is working. You're able to produce profit or revenue early, build a technology platform that's going to be able to solve a real problem.
Got it. And like the typical way that there's tons of venture funds out there, the typical way that they do that is they go out and they look for startup founders to invest in. And you guys do that, but you also have a startup studio where you have your own ideas of things that need to, and then you bring in entrepreneurs and founders to basically make those things happen. Is that right?
That's right. And it's generally spaces that we know are going to be big spaces. And then we bring in founders to think up the ideas, with us. So we do think that the founder mindset is different than most. And they're always thinking outside of the box. They're always thinking about new ways to solve problems and challenges. So in our studio, we don't build a company without the founder in place because the founder is the vision driver of where that company is going to go.
And what are some examples of businesses that you have done that way through like the startup studio?
Yeah. So one of our areas is health and wellness. So we have seen for a long time that digital healthcare platforms, wellness as an industry in general, is just at the early nascent stages of where it's going to be. And we worked with a founder early on. About 3 years ago, we started a company in the telemedicine space, but really thinking about women's health specifically. And one of the fastest growing challenges with women's health is thyroid challenges, so hypothyroidism. So we have a telemedicine platform that tests and diagnoses hypothyroidism and then allows for people to have a care routine through a digital platform, with endocrinologists and nutritionists and anti-stress modalities. And it's called Paloma Health. And so we brought in the founder. We started testing and building and iterating on this idea. We brought in a co-founder to work with the founder, and then it's really their business, but we essentially incubated it with them.
So did you have the idea like, hey, hypothyroidism in women needs to be addressed. We want to figure out something to do here, or did you have the idea like we think telemedicine is going to be big, we want to do something here, or we just want to do something in health and wellness, and you brought in like people and that's what you landed on? Like, how did you come to that? Like, what's the process there?
Yeah, so we do think about category specific areas. So I think we connected because we just put out our thesis on the first area, health and wellness of the human needs economy. And we identified areas that we think have big opportunity in the next 5 to 10 years of scaling, where technology can come in and help aid some of the, bridge the gap for where the challenges are seen right now. So we'll put out a call, say, these are some of the big areas that we think are going to be big. And then founders will come in, and then we have a business design process, and we start to test and iterate and say, is this a need? Can we get customers for this? Who's the audience? How does the founder know how to speak to that audience? And then you start to see, whether or not that idea works. And then we put in the earliest stages of capital to be able to help fuel that. And that's, there's no formula for how businesses started. I think it's very hard to rinse and repeat, right? So you really have to make it a pretty authentic process.
You started with health and wellness and ended up on a telemedicine platform for hypothyroidism in women.
Right. And then we also make some investments. We have an investment in a company called Tia Health, which is a women's healthcare platform. We have an investment called Electra Health, which is targeted towards women later stages in their life, going through menopause. And so it's a category focus of ours, and either we'll build with a founder in that category, or we'll invest in companies that we see that are solving a problem, in a unique way.
Definitely a lot I want to dig into on that. I'm not sure if I want to dig into it now or want to circle back around to it. But okay,
well,
so
I'll tell you some of the other areas that we're excited about.
Yeah.
Because you asked too. We started Human almost 5 years ago, and we've been thinking about these spaces for a while. And when the pandemic hit, I think it just put things much more into focus. And the macro trends started to listen to the way or resonate with our sentiment, right? And so health and wellness was a big issue. It's even more critical now. The next one we have is called Future of Work. Thinking about how work is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years, and nothing has impacted that more than the last 8 weeks. Right. So that will be another category that will bring in founders and start building alongside, in that category. And then there's another category we call communities, and that's thinking about how you're helping, solve problems for the family, for the elderly, in parenting, and your communities at large. And so those are the 3 big areas that we're excited about right now.
And, one of the reasons what caught my eye and made me think, oh yeah, I got to reconnect with Heather, was an article that you just posted on LinkedIn about need to have versus nice to have. And so is that something that's new to the way that you're thinking? Because you mentioned that you've always been thinking about a needs-based economy, but
yeah,
are some of the investments that you've made kind of nice to haves, and what is the difference between a nice to have and a need to have?
I don't want to place a value judgment. We, on any of the businesses that are being started, you really have, you kind of know it when you see it, but especially in times like this, you want to make sure that there's a strong customer need that you're filling. And not only that, it has a strong mission. What is the purpose of it? And is it helping solve a true problem that you feel really good about? And so the human needs economy for me just says, what's ancillary, what's fluff, what is, only addressing problems of a small percentage of people. We're not the people to build that. We're not the people to invest in that. We're the people to say, what are some of the largest challenges we face as humans? And can we be, on the forefront of thinking of innovative solutions that can also be extremely scalable and sustainable businesses?
What do you have certain criteria that you look at and when you say, okay, that's a nice to have, or no, this is a need to have? How do you determine what that is?
We do have criteria, but like I said, it's a little bit of a need to, it's a little bit of a feeling. And so, that's why we categorize these 3 different areas, because we do feel like if they fall in those categories, then they're solving a need. An example is we have organic baby food company called Tiny Organics.
Mm-hmm.
And the founders do you? Oh, great. The founders are extremely mission oriented, and every decision they make for their company is with the mom at the center, the customer at the center. And they were very forward thinking. And when they started their early prototypes, they didn't use plastic for packaging because they said moms are not going to want plastic in 5 years. So we might as well push the market to adopt this now, and worked with their co-manufacturers to be able to produce different types of packaging. And it was just a very forward-thinking way of building their business. They are solving a real need for moms, a real problem. They also have a strong brand and market voice that stands for something.
Was that something that you guys kind of incubated and came up with yourself, or was that a business that you invested in?
We did co-build that with the founders early on, but we never. The business, if it takes off, it's always the founder that made that happen. Mm-hmm. We were there for the earliest stages of ideation and support and the first check-in, but the companies are built by the founders.
So I'm actually really curious about that because, like I said, I know it well. I would say I know it a little bit as, because I have a toddler and we went through the baby food stage, and also because like every year I go to the Expo West, which didn't happen this year, but like you see, like there's just like a whole section of baby food stuff. So like, what was it that you were looking at in the baby food market that wasn't there? And not to get so specific about the baby food market, but just to get a sense of like how you're thinking about that when you're looking to come up with a new solution in that space, because it seems to me like there's a ton of different baby food options.
Yeah, it's a great question, because you kind of have to say, why them, why the founders, and why now? What's the white space that they're filling, and why is this going to be something that's 10x better than anything on the market? And there were a couple of different factors and trends that we saw. One was the need for organic baby food. It, surprisingly, is just at scale is not there. Affordable organic baby food is not there in the market. And so we did have one of the co-founders was from the CPG world, was at Mondelez, understood where the big brands were investing and where there was a big white space. And so he knew that was going to be a big place. And then the other founders, one is actually from Europe, and she said baby-led weaning is something that is commonplace for us in Europe. And it's not even a thing in the US yet. And so baby-led weaning is actually using whole foods earlier on in their life cycle, and also introducing new flavors. So the first 100 flavors are introduced to your baby through Tiny Organics. And that means that they grow up with a more savory forward palate. They're actually craving more nutritious food. So there's a lot behind it. They have a nutritionist who's on staff from Tufts University, and there's a lot behind it. And they said that the conscious mom wants this at an affordable price with convenience. And so they went with a organic flash frozen model, and you can subscribe and you get them sent to your house. So it's convenient, it's affordable, and it's organic. And that wasn't out there.
So when you turn yourself, I mean, that's when you're, now in this post-COVID era, like when you're looking at need to haves, what types of things do you think that we need to have?
I think we need to have more affordable and accessible lifelong learning. So being able to understand where in the future of work, where does your education and work coincide? Where do you consistently and constantly keep learning and reskilling and upskilling yourself in order to continue to be valuable in the jobs that you're performing? And that's across every socioeconomic background. So I think education and work is going to become much more closely linked. I think the need for healthcare, access for healthcare, culturally relevant healthcare is really important. We are looking at, how nutrition is a big part of the way that we should live, that nutrition is everything and food is medicine. So we have some companies and investments in nutritional food. All these aspects of what makes us human.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to jump on the call, because I feel like we just showed up to this fight unprepared. Like, there's so much that we can do now, and there's going to be a lot of like Monday morning quarterbacking about, how different people handled the crisis once it happened, but we just showed up for it. It's like showing up for a race without training. And
it's a good analogy. It's a good analogy. That's what happened.
And like, there's our hospitals weren't funded properly. They didn't have the ventilators. They just, our whole health system, the way that we eat, the way that we are, the way that we live, we don't live healthy enough. And you look at a country, people have been talking a lot about Sweden and giving it different, saying whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing because they didn't, do the lockdown like everybody else. And I think it'll take some time to figure that out. But their country was just better prepared for that. Like, they have a better healthcare system to start with. Their people are healthier to be able to even think about that in the first place. And, we weren't in that position. We were like in a position where our hospitals here in New York were legitimately going to be overrun if we didn't do this lockdown. Like, we didn't have a choice but to do the lockdown. And I'm hoping that we kind of come out of this with a better focus on what we need to be thinking about with regards to our health.
Yeah, you asked about the nice to have versus need to have. I mean, the honest answer is we're figuring that out in real time. It's like people thought that it was nice to have access to therapy and mental health resources. It's actually a need to have, and everybody's mental health should be a priority, regardless of where you are. And so what does that look like? What does it look like when you should be able to have a more flexible work environment so that you can take care of your kids and be a parent when you need to be a parent, and be productive at work when you need to be productive at work? I mean, these are things that I think the U.S. in general have been neglecting, and we're paying for it, like you said, when something like this happens.
But, like you said, a crisis is the time for entrepreneurs to step up. And like you see, what you got to do is you got to see the problem and you got to fix it. And it's also an interesting time with, sadly, so many people out of work. Like, some of them are going to have no choice but to start a business.
I hope so. I mean, I think that this is we've seen businesses come out of past downturns and past recessions.
Mm-hmm.
And, now even technology is more prevalent. So hopefully that's even more of an aid to be able to, I think entrepreneurialism is amazing. And I think that's something that our country does have really ingrained within it, that you can do that. And one of my passions is being able to increase access to investment dollars to different types of founders, right? So it's not just founders in technology areas and hubs like San Francisco and but it's other places. So we're starting to see that develop.
Do you make investments in like Des Moines or Oklahoma? Or like, do you guys look for ideas in other places other than like the major investment hubs like New York and San Francisco and Boulder?
I would like to. It's definitely on the roadmap. We're still a startup ourselves. So,
yeah.
So, our model is working here, and then I'd love to be able to take it in different places where you can find undiscovered talent and people who are ambitious and thinking about solving challenges. I'm from the Midwest, originally. And so It's always been a dream of mine to be able to create that community there. It's really a matter of creating the community that can, sustain the startup ecosystem.
What on the health and wellness thing, in your article you wrote that things like Peloton and Mirror and kind of these Barry's Boot Camp and Soul Cycle, that type of health and wellness might be at type of company investment, from an investment point of view, might be at its peak. Where do you think is like the next big area for kind of fitness, for if somebody wanted to be in like a fitness, health and wellness type of a company to help people live healthier? What do you think the next big area would be?
I was going to ask you the same thing. I'd love your perspective on this, especially around fitness. What I've loved seeing with all of the companies that you just mentioned, and now with quarantine, the amount of community around fitness and seeing how imperative that is. And, there are different levels of athlete and different levels, but not everybody. In fact, most people are not the people who are training for marathons, right? And so how are you creating those incentives and ecosystems around? And I think I mentioned Way Better in there because they have kind of a gamification for motivation around fitness goals. And it's beautiful to see the community that comes around that. So I think if you can unlock any type of community behavior around any type of fitness, you have the holy grail.
It's not that easy to do, unfortunately. And also a lot of the communities that probably need it most are, I don't think like they're, unfortunately, like I think Peloton doesn't serve like the communities that need it most.
No, I agree with that.
I was going to say, like, I don't know. I have a question about this. I think about it. So much of like, kind of like with the virus, like, yes, we have like people who are doing crazy scientific research and they're coming up with vaccines that like is very, very tech oriented. Like you cannot come up with a virus, a vaccine or like a medicine or, without the science. But then there's also very simple, like the things that have made the most difference are the simple things like wear a mask, wash your hands, keep 6 feet away from other people, do the quarantine thing to flatten the curve, like totally non-scientific things, very like that anybody can do. And I kind of feel like the same way about health and wellness is like, you can get like 80% of the way there with go to bed earlier, drink 100 ounces of water, walk 30 minutes a day, and eat a salad. Like, I don't know what the business angle is there to like make a startup but I think that's probably like that could get almost everybody 80% of the way there. And like the rest is all the apps and the Pelotons and the charity miles and the, whatever, the big tech companies would be like the last 20%. But
I mean, that's why we started with the baby food. You want to start your kids with nutrition early and understanding that palate, because then they'll go for that when they're older. And it's definitely scientifically proven now that it starts to happen. So what do you see, because you're so active in the fitness space, what are you excited about?
I'm actually pretty excited about like seeing how different fitness instructors out of necessity have been able to use things like Zoom to kind of teach classes online and things like that. And it's definitely going to change the way that they do things. And it's not for now as good as it was when like they had like live classes and things like that. But I feel like, there's to kind of go back to what you were saying about continuing education. Like there's just like it's totally accelerated the idea of just being able to learn from people no matter where they are, whether it's, doing a fitness class, whether it's doing a class teaching you how to build a website, whether it's, doing a class that's teaching you to upskill your professional skills, a cooking class. Like if you're, for example, if you're a chef and you can't do your restaurant now, like could you do like a Zoom cooking class for 20 people to teach them how to, cook healthy for their families? Because we all have to eat home now. I mean, that's definitely not as good as having your restaurant, but maybe it's like a pivot that you have to make and could, go in like another direction for you and lead to another opportunity. Or if you're a fitness instructor and you can't do like your gym, you can't train people at the gym right now and you can do it on Zoom, and could that like lead into another opportunity where you build like your community of 100 people and, you're training them and they each pay you, $100 a month, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah. So, I think it definitely has opened people's eyes to the fact that one, you have a home gym. Everybody has a home gym. If you have a space in your body, right? You can move in your own. You don't need all of those extra things.
Yeah, you don't need anything.
And then two, you really can be effective as a community builder through these tech platforms. I mean, we did do a Zoom class actually with a chef from Italy teaching us how to make pasta with all of our founders. And it was so much fun. and pretty simple and fun. And I was so impressed that he just, yes, he was an entrepreneur and he pivoted so fast. And, people have talked to me about how there's some musicians who have created, businesses now celebrating kids' birthdays on Zoom, because you need kind of a social DJ where you have somebody who is, who's keeping all of the kids' attention. So on a Zoom call, I mean, it's a completely different construct, and it won't completely stay that way when things open up, but it definitely just opened up an entire parallel income track for people.
It's actually been making me think about like just like a broader change that I wish, and it's something that I was thinking about before the pandemic. But I hope that it happens. Like, people are hoping to go back to normal, and I really hope that we don't go back to normal, because normal didn't work. Normal was totally broken, and it's what got us here in the first place. I just, all the consumerism, like buying stuff, like we don't need stuff, but like if we could be buying skills and like I would much rather pay for like a learning-based economy than a consumption-based economy. And like I would pay you to teach me how to work out. I would pay you to teach me how to cook healthy for my family. I would pay you to teach me how to play the harmonica because I really want to learn how to play that. I would pay you to teach me how to do magic because I'm really interested in that, rather than like buying crap that I don't need that gets shoved away into a closet. I would rather pay people for like their knowledge and their skills. And with, Zoom and like what we're all learning how to do now, we've all had to learn how to adapt and be able to do it virtually. I hope that people, all these entrepreneurs that were once giving stuff could now learn how to give their knowledge, and we would just pay for the knowledge and the experiences rather than the stuff.
You've hit on a good point too. I think people can learn from their community. I'll give you an example. At 7:30 in the morning, every morning, I have 5 girlfriends who we do Pilates together, because one woman has done so many Pilates classes, she could really get her certification just by how much she's done. So she teaches it, and she's now found a whole passion that this is what she does. But I never would have gotten up to go and do that from a different instructor, but because I know her and she's a trusted source, then I started to learn from her. And I think that there's something there. And just what you were talking about, if you were to coach people on training and that you already have such a trusted brand and personality in this space, I think it's much different than if somebody was just starting by themselves, starting cold.
Right. Yeah, that's a hard thing, starting cold, but you just have to build the skills up over. Everybody has something that they can teach, though, I think. Like, everybody has learned something in their life that, whether it's some skill or some wisdom, that they could teach other people.
How did you, with your team at Charity Miles, how are you doing remote work?
Well, we always were pretty remote. So, and we have a very small team. So our developer is in Texas. My colleague Michelle is here in New York. But she actually, sometimes she works from a different office here in the city. So like we're always pretty remote. And then, so it's been pretty easy to deal with that for us. And it's been fun because I always do like Zoom calls and Google Hangouts. And before this, like that, I feel like people didn't really do it as much. And so they would kind of feel weird doing it with me, but now it's like what everybody does. So it's like they kind of caught up.
I love it.
Are you seeing any changes there on your end?
Yeah, we switched pretty fast, but going back to the learning, we have a 15-minute stand-up every morning with our whole team, and one new person has to lead that, and they bring something to the table that's not work related. And so I've learned so much about some of our team that is from New Zealand, what types of cooking they do, what kind of exercise, what kind of jazz music they like. I mean, it's been so interesting to see what people come up with for their 15-minute presentation. And, cool. We have one woman who's phenomenal, been in the venture community for a long time. She was a professional dancer, and I didn't know that. And she helped, give us some stretching techniques for being so sedentary all the time. It's like, this is gold. I want to be able to provide this to everybody.
My aunt and uncle have a company that does and I don't know, I haven't spoken to them about this, but they do events. They do like large events for large corporate events, which obviously is going through a challenging time right now. But one of the things that they've done forever, they've been around for, my whole life, but they have this thing called summer school, where like every think it's either one day or like one day a week throughout the summer, different people from the office come in and teach something new, like some skill or hobby or knowledge that they have. Like, or one woman would always come in and be like, she would teach like the 5 best restaurants that you didn't know, like hidden restaurants that you didn't know in New York City, or someone would come in and teach some music or something cool. So I think that's a cool idea that you guys are doing that. Maybe I should maybe start that with charity models. We don't have too big of a team though, but be interesting to learn from everybody else.
Yeah, it started as just a check-in so that everybody knew they had a checkpoint, a community. They needed to get up and shower at a certain time and like start their day, you know. And then it really became something that I think brought us all much closer as a team.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, with Charity Models on the Future of Work, we built a feature that enables companies to sponsor their employees. And we built that, you know, we started that last year, obviously without COVID in mind, but because companies were reaching out to us for it. And we finished it in like the end of January, and I was like going to market with it, and I was like, February was really tough. Like there was not many companies that were like, the kind of COVID was starting to like seep into people's minds, and things nothing was really moving. And then once the lockdown happened, man, like companies have been reaching out to us all day for that. They all want to get their employees moving while they're working from home, and build like, you know, be able to donate to charity and get their employees to feel good. So I feel like that's a pretty interesting trend in the new work environment that we're all
Isn't that
working
interesting
from home.
as humans, how that kind of that trajectory, you know, tracks, where people think about their basic needs first, and then once that there's a little bit of that subsides, where you don't feel that you're in survival mode, and you immediately want to start giving. You immediately want to start the gratitude, because in a time that's really tough, that is what gives you so much more solace. I mean, it was beautiful to see that. You're talking about New York. I have some friends in the hospitality industry, you know, that's just gotten crushed, but the way that they've been able to rally, restaurants to be able to provide food for healthcare workers is like the most amazing feat of humanity. I love seeing some of the things that come out of this.
Yeah, in a way, like it's also the solution, like, right? Like paying restaurants, which are out of work, to feed healthcare workers, which need the food, is like a brilliant solution.
Yeah. There's one called Frontline Foods that everyone should check out.
Yep. I was just on a webinar with them. They're great.
Oh, great.
And then another friend of mine from high school, and this is how also, I love how like simple this was. Like she didn't even start an organization. Like a friend of mine from high school, I saw her, she was like posting TikTok videos on, I don't have TikTok, but I saw them on Facebook, and with her daughter and her kids dancing and saying, if you donate, we'll keep dancing. And she made a Venmo account, help the first responders, and people just donated to the Venmo account, and they used the money to pay restaurants to make food for, she had like, I think $30,000 or $40,000 raised to feed.
Love that.
It was just like this brilliant idea. She didn't start a company. She didn't start a nonprofit. She didn't do anything. She just made a Venmo account at Help the First Responders. And you could like donate to that, and the money went to the local restaurants to feed the first responders. It's brilliant.
But I mean,
also,
we originally, oh, good.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we originally met because when I came to New York 11 years ago, there was a really strong social entrepreneurial community. And, you know, I've been in impact investing. I was in philanthropy, you know, and I really think the next generation philanthropist is the entrepreneur. And you're definitely one of those, you know, an early inspiration for everything that we're doing here. Just people who see problems and solve them with those solutions. All those people you were just talking about, they're all entrepreneurs, right? Because you're seeing a need, and you're the fastest way to solve that need. And you can't manufacture that, you know, interest. Once you see it, you know that that's something that's real.
Right. So on that, I would like some of the people listening to this may be trying to figure out how to be an entrepreneur, and they might not have been an entrepreneur before. Maybe they're trying to figure that out because they lost their job. Maybe they're trying to figure that out because they didn't lose their job, but they just, you know, they're just, not to be an entrepreneur to start a business, but like they've got a new challenge in their life right now, whether it's, working from home and taking care of their kids, or they see a need in their community, or they see the need that the restaurants in their communities are going out of business and first responders need help. Like, what is like a process that you would give to somebody to start thinking about how to solve a problem in their life or their community? What is an entrepreneurial process? How would you describe that so that the people listening to this that might be looking to solve that problem can start applying that?
It's a great question. There is more information, available to an entrepreneur now than ever before about how to even start with the start. Start with a few tests to see. I call it the minimal viable product, but that just means like, what is the most simple version of what you're trying, the path of least action? What are you trying to solve? And can you do that very manually? You just described, a process of creating a Venmo account. You don't need a flashy tech platform or engineers to try to, there's so many tools now that you can put up a Squarespace page. You can start seeing where the flow of customers are, or where you're solving a real problem. And then if you start to see that problem is being solved, that's where you take your indicator for the next step on how to build something out. And I mean, when you listen to the biggest entrepreneurs now they never had this idea that it was going to be this massive company. It was, a small idea that they were thinking of an immediate need that was being filled. And then they kept on seeing and seizing opportunity and growing, with that opportunity. And so I think that there's been, a glorification of the startup ecosystem that means that you need to have a tech background, or you need to have an engineer on staff, or you need to raise a lot of capital, or all this sort of stuff. But really, it's as simple as, if you see a need, it's never easy, but if you have enough of that kind of grit to persevere, then just see where there's a couple of customers. And if there's a customer, you have a product. And then, you just follow that customer and you incessantly listen to what they need, and they'll tell you what the next feature is. They'll tell you what the next thing is that you need to fulfill for that. I don't know if that's too generic, but, there are now online courses too. Y Combinator is an incubator, a famous incubator in Silicon Valley. They have now an entire online course of how to start a startup. And I would go to ycombinator.com and I'd look at that. It's called Startup School. We have similar courses that we'll be able to offer too. And I think you just learn. You have to be really, really curious, and you consistently learn all the time about what the new tools are, what's free, what's accessible, and then find other people who are passionate about the thing that you're passionate about, and then start working on nights and weekends if you have a day job. Start using your time instead of going to watch a TV show, or you can't go to the bars right now. You can't go to just find something that you're really curious about and start learning. And if you get excited about an area, ride that energy, ride that excitement, and start building towards that. A big thing I would say is you don't have to have a big idea to start something. Actually, starting small is so much better. You just have to constantly be changing your perspective. And if you see opportunity, taking that opportunity.
I think one of the things that you said in there that really resonated with me was focusing on the customer. And the customer is the person who has the need. So there's a lot of people out there that need something right now. And, especially in our community, the people listen to this, we all want to help. And we tend to think of help as charity, like, oh, I'm going to give back. But really, like, if you can, doesn't have to be giving to charity, although of course I encourage everybody to do that. Like, how can you help somebody? And if you could think about that, not for the sake of necessarily starting a business, but for the sake of helping, and that's an entrepreneur's mindset. You're there to solve a problem and focus on their needs and how you can help them. Heather, are there any kind of like calls to action that you'd like to make to our members right now before we wrap it up?
I think one thing for me that the last 8 weeks have really highlighted is that taking care of yourself first is so, so important. whether you have small kids or you have a business or you have a job, you have to show up with your full self. So don't feel that productivity should look the same in this type of an environment, but you'll start to see when you focus a little bit more on yourself each day, even if it's a few more minutes, you start to become stronger and the rest of the stuff feels a little bit easier. You know, I've experienced a lot of ups and downs during this time, but I keep on coming back to, you know, just being grateful for the little things. Like you always have something that's a little bit more than, you know, than somebody else. And so you should be grateful for what you have. And I think that gratitude should be the, you know, for me, I've made that gratitude to be the foundation of everything that I do. So I just, you know, everybody's doing the best they can. And I guess I that's all I have to offer right now.
All right. Where can people go to learn more about Human Ventures?
Our website's humanventures.co. And we have a lot of resources there, and we'll continue to grow and put out more resources. But we always love to connect with entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur and you'd like to connect with us, reach out. humanventures.co.
Awesome. Heather, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody out there for walking or running along with us, hopefully. Hopefully it's as beautiful where you are as it is with me. Look at these flowers. Isn't that nice?
So nice. It's really great to talk to you. I hope we get to catch up more.
Me too. Thanks so much, Heather.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Every mom
Bye.
matters.